Joining us now is Victor Attah with stories trending around the world. Good morning, Shaitan.
Good morning, Doctor. Happy New Year. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Vimbai.
Shaitan.
I know it's already on the 13th, but my rule is as long as you've not seen that person this year, you can still say Happy New Year. It's lovely to be here. So let's kick off what's trending. Now let's start with a story here in Nigeria. An unnamed female passenger who has narrowly escaped being attacked by angry passengers at the Victor Attah International Airport in Uyo after she blocked an Ibom Air flight bound for Abuja. The flight, scheduled to carry about 100 passengers, including the crew, was delayed due to her actions, as revealed in a statement issued on Saturday by the Director of Public Affairs and Consumer Protection of the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, Michael Achimogu. According to him, the issue began when the airline informed passengers that luggage exceeding 20 kg might not arrive on the same flight but on the next available one. While passengers initially agreed to this agreement, the woman became furious upon discovering her bag had not been loaded onto the aircraft. She disembarked and demanded that her bag be loaded immediately, threatening to prevent the flight from taking off. Attempts by officials from the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria, Aviation Security, and the pilot to mediate proved unsuccessful. The woman re-entered the cabin to retrieve her bag, but then blocked the aisle, continuing her protest. Now let's take some tweets and see how some Nigerians are reacting to this trending video. The first tweet there reads, if you can just pull that up, Michael says, events like this help the agencies to identify opportunities for improvements in passenger handling protocols. However, it does not justify unruly passenger behavior. The next tweet there reads, I don't see why she should be prosecuted. She did the right thing. Her luggage should not be left out, and airlines should not bite more than they can chew by collecting money from passengers and leaving their luggage out for another flight to bring it. She did the right thing. And then finally, that last tweet there reads, she should be blacklisted by all domestic airlines from flying for at least 2 years. Goes ahead to tag the Honorable Mr. Festus Keyamo, saying you should look into this matter before it becomes a norm by unruly individuals. Now, I'm sure you've all seen this video. I picked those three tweets because it's almost like three sides to the story. Yes. One person is defending her. The other person is saying this is a good thing so that we can know how to handle such people next time. And one person saying, let's just ban her outrightly. So let's start with you, Vimbai. What are your thoughts?
I think Nigerian authorities are very kind because I refer to an incident that happened during the festive period in South Africa where a lady who was flying, they were airborne, and she became rowdy because she wanted more alcohol. So, you know, they were serving alcohol. She took more. She was obviously intoxicated. So she had a back and forth spat with the air hostess because she was demanding that her right is to have more alcohol. Anyway, when the flight landed, she left there in handcuffs. She was immediately arrested because there's zero tolerance for unruly behavior on an aircraft, on an airline. It's dangerous. You're putting so many things at risk in that space. But this lady is selfish. You know, the terms and conditions were explained and she accepted, she agreed to them. You know, so I think that her behavior was extremely unfair. But for me, what was my main, another thing that caught my attention is the fact that the airport in Uyo, now that Ibom Air is expanding, they really need to get the international landing protocol that allows them to take off and land in hours of darkness. It's very important. I know Calabar is in the same boat, but Calabar doesn't have that much traffic. But Uyo, I think in this day and age, because this flight ended up being cancelled, right? Because the sun had already set. So I think it's also very important for a carrier like Ibom Air that's expanding and that's become such a, you know, a lot of people love Ibom Air. It's reliable, it's clean, the aircrafts are relatively new and so forth. So I think this is also time for the governor to look into ensuring that that international landing protocol that allows takeoff and landing during hours of darkness also be be purchased for the airport.
Thank you so much. Fantastic submission. And of course, just to add, the Ncaa has actually said that they will be prosecuting this passenger. But your thoughts, Ayo?
Okay, so there are a number of things that are strange to me in this story. The first thing is, if you'd been told verbally and you agreed to it, that your luggage would arrive late? Why did you make such a fuss? I think that's where, in terms of giving the other person an opportunity to speak, would be where I would come, one of the things I would come from, because it doesn't make logical sense. If you agreed, you are aware that your luggage would not go with you, why then did you now decide to make a fuss while you're on air? But that's one part. So let me pack that aside, maybe until we hear the woman's version of things. I don't think we've heard her own version, only the version of Ncaa. First of all, kudos to Michael Achimugu. I've often talked about how I respect the work that he does. I've had an opportunity to engage him myself, and his response was very swift. I think he's done really well in the Ncaa. But this is tantamount to terrorism. It could be seen as an act of terrorism, where you hold up a flight, like you mentioned, Vimbai, a number of people putting a lot of lives at risk. It's a national security issue. And maybe she wasn't aware of it and decided to do her own personal protest on the plane. Totally responsible. Another criticism has come for security protocol or security officials at the airport. Why do they allow her extend for that long and deprive the other passengers of flying? It's one person out of about 100 and something people. Why wasn't their response swift enough? I've seen cases where someone Bobrisky was whisked off an international flight, just because, EFCC came. So it's very swift, you understand, because what if she was a real terrorist? Would we have waited for her and just been looking and be saying, oh, there was some, and then wait till the plane couldn't fly? So I think that's one area, and I'm glad that in that Michael Achimugu's tweet or X post, he had said that there are lessons to be learned from the side of the Ncaa. Their response protocol to security challenges such as this. It could have been someone else. It could have been someone brandishing a weapon. It could have been someone who was would they have also said, oh, we couldn't do anything? And so the passengers were well within their rights to be quite upset. And I think they also should, to the airline who made them miss their flight. The issue is not just the woman. The fact that the airline, Ncaa, and all the people involved did not respond enough in time. In fact, what I was now thinking is that we're so used to missing flights that it wasn't a big deal to them, because in other parts of the world, what you're thinking in your mind is that this has to go on schedule because it will affect other connecting flights. It would affect the morning, because now they had to fly in the morning. We know how that could disrupt. So you are making things go. Maybe it's okay, the flight will not move tonight. Everybody sit down. We're so used to that. So then the final point I'd like to say is this. It's great to see the perspective of the other side. We often talk about airlines who delay, airport officials who are unwilling. So we see that passengers themselves are also guilty of these things. Sometimes they're the culprits. Sometimes I feel sorry for some of those airline staff members who have to face the anger of passengers. So this also shows the other side of the story. It's not just the airline and the airport officials.
The big issue here is security. And security is the primary issue in aviation. In fact, pilots are given the powers to refuse to fly if any passenger desires, to be troublesome or problematic, because once you create problems, you put the lives of other passengers at risk. Number two, again, talking about security, is that aircraft have baggage restrictions. That's why they say you cannot carry more than 20 kg, you cannot carry more than this limit. But Nigerians, they like to carry load like tankansu, they will carry plenty of it. That was why at a time at Heathrow, they had a special section for Nigerians when they showed up with their tankansu baggage, to go there and get a proper measurement. So in this particular case, baggage restriction was also the issue. The woman was told that the excess luggage she was carrying could not go on board, and they said, oh, it will come with the next flight. Number three is that Uyo airport is a sunset airport. It is called a sunset airport. So you can only fly at a particular time. Once it's a particular time in the evening, the aircraft will not be able to leave. So those three security issues were the main considerations. And then this woman, Mrs. Ubane, that is her name, said, look, this has become habitual for Ibom Air, and that previously her luggage was delayed. She got it later, of course, according to the reports, but this was her second time having this experience, and she said, nobody will move. In typical Nigerian fashion, Nigerians have little respect for other people's rights. 89 persons aboard that aircraft were left stranded. In fact, some of them wanted to lynch her. It got to a situation that some passengers wanted to take the laws into their hands. And that's where, perhaps we should commend the Ncaa officials and the airline officials who do not allow her to be lynched. Because there were persons going to Abuja who had contractual obligations. Yeah. And this woman just held everybody to ransom. So I think security, one. Two, people must also know that holding up aircraft, holding up situations because of other people is in international aviation is in fact an act of terrorism. It is a crime. And that's why the Ncaa is saying that this particular woman will be taken to court. Now, if she behaves like this, I wonder how she behaves at home and what her husband is going through. All these problematic Nigerians who think that they have more rights than other people. So I'm not sympathizing with her, but I know where she's coming from. Many Nigerians suffer in the hands of airlines that delay flights, that also are very rude. Service provision, custom is zero with many of the airlines. And this is what some Nigerians overreact to. But whatever be the provocation, you have to act within the limits of decorum.
Definitely. Thank you so much for those fantastic submissions. Let's go to our next story. Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde has approved the appointment of Prince Abimbola Owode as the new Alafin of Oyo. The announcement was made by the Commissioner for Information and Orientation, Dotun Oyelade. He stated that Owode was chosen after extensive consultations and traditional divinations conducted by the Oyo kingmakers, the Oyomesi. Now, the Commissioner for the Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs, Ademola Ojo, also said that this announcement ends the legal and social disputes that followed the passing of the former Alafin, Oba Lamidi Adeyemi III. However, kingmakers in Oyo have rejected the appointment of Prince Owode as the new Alafin, describing the appointment as illegal and invalid. Reacting to the news in a letter to the governor signed by their lawyer, Adekunle Shobaloju, 5 kingmakers from Oyo said that they did not recommend the prince to the state government. They insist that their chosen candidate for the Alafin was Prince Lukman Adelodun Bade Geshin. Now, let's come back to the studio, of course, and talk about this because, we have on one end, we're celebrating, they were celebrating, of course, the Ohaneze, who have just appointed their general president. But we're now seeing this back and forth between the kingmakers who, of course, Seyi Makinde said were part of the process. When it comes to matters like this, Ayo, especially when we're trying to mix traditional rulers and, of course, the appointed rulers in the state. Your thoughts?
Okay, so this is when we've had this conversation before on the show where state and tradition clash. And Dr. Attah, I'm sure when he speaks, would explain, I believe that the governor is well within his rights to make appointments and has some certain oversight function when it comes to traditional rulers. And this has always been the argument for a long time, that according to these chiefs, there's a process for which the Alafin is meant to be appointed. And that process is where it's very traditional. They have to approach the gods, and then the gods, following the approval, okay, divinations, consultations, and recommendations from the kingmakers. Then they make their appointment known to the governor, who then ratifies it. That's supposed to be his role. But in this case, they say the governor himself is imposing a candidate on them. I was saying earlier on that when it comes to kingship matters in Nigeria, we see a lot of times that there are challenges. Even the Ohaneze Indigo you just mentioned, we had an interview just a few minutes ago where there are challenges to that. We have 2 factions who have emerged who say they're the president general. So these issues will arise. But beyond that are even some other underlying accusations of saying that the governor has appointed. Then there's also Christians, the part of religion and tradition, that should Christians or Muslims attain the position of kings or obas in this sense, because of the way that things had to be done, that they had to keep sacred their traditions. In the past, we've seen, even at least from the Bible, which I'm aware of, in the past, we used to have kings who were also priests, and so those were merged. And I think we've seen an emergence of that in recent times. However, there's still that criticism. So a lot of things going on. They might end up going to court. I mean, we've seen that in the past. They've gone to court in the past. But let's see if tradition will prevail in terms of the divinations and consultations, or if the state will prevail with the appointment of the man sanctioned by Governor Seyi Makinde.
Thank you, Dr. Bati. Very briefly.
Okay, look, Wale Soyinka wrote a play titled Kongi's Harvest, where he dramatizes, which is the conflict between tradition and modernity. How the modern rulers, the post-colonial rulers, got to a situation whereby they abolished, more or less, abbreviated tradition, in the sense that traditional rulers were no longer as powerful as they used to be. Hence, you now have a situation whereby governors give staff of office to traditional rulers. And traditional rulers in Nigeria became staff of the local government, the Ministry of Chieftaincy Affairs, and they depended on the governor of the state for their stipends. That's the background. Now, that conflict between tradition and modernity is what played out before now in different other cases, the most recent being that of the Kano Emirate Council, where you have the case of Emir Sanusi and you have Emir Bayero. You know, it's the state government playing a role there. In other words, the politicization of the traditional stool. Now, in the case of Oyo, now the Oyomesi, there are 7 in number. 5 of them are saying that the governor has acted unilaterally to impose an order on them. And who are these people? The Bashonu, the Ashikpa, the Alakmani, and also the Akaniku, I think, yes. This 5 out of 7. The governor says, due to consultations and what the divination said, who are they 50 years old, an engineer, MSc engineering, based in Canada, working with Manitoba as a supervisor, is a man that the state government has chosen. The Oyomesi, who have the traditional function, are saying that they are relying on the chieftaincy, Oyo chieftaincy law of 1967, and that the governor is not a member of Oyomesi. So this is where the conflict is. And the Oyomesi, 5 of them, are saying that they will go to court. What do we expect? We just appeal to the people of Oyo to make sure that this does not degenerate into conflict within the community, into violence within the community, because traditional people take these matters very seriously.
Yes,
as we have seen in Kano, and as we may see in other traditional places. Governor Makinde has to ensure that there is peace.
Thank you.
But when the matter goes to court anyway, they will play it out. I hope that they will come together, because Owade himself is a prince. He's from a ruling family. Bade Gashin, the other candidate that the Oyomesi say they have chosen, is also a prince. So, they call it family affair.
All right, then I do hope they settle it amicably. Let's move on to our next story now. The transmission company of Nigeria, TCN, has debunked reports suggesting that the national grid collapsed. In a statement released on Saturday, TCN spokesman Ndidi Mba clarified that the national grid remained stable and operational throughout the day. He attributed Saturday's power fluctuations in parts of the country to line tripping, and he said that disruption was traced to the tripping of the Oshogbo, Ihovo, and Benin Omotosho transmission lines, which significantly impacted the power supply to the Lagos axis. Now, the nation has experienced a series of recent national grid collapses, forcing many Nigerians to record blackouts and react. Let's see what the people are saying very quickly. First tweet there reads, the national grid collapsing was false news, but I don't get why some Nigerians are celebrating like it's a big deal. Do you have uninterrupted power supply in your area 24/7? No. So why celebrate mediocrity? The next tweet there reads, if you can just go, yes, whether it collapsed or not, most Nigerians won't notice because there is never light. And finally, a question that I am asking you in the studio, which is the next tweet. Can we just get it? Okay. But when will it collapse? Vimbai.
I'm just reading that over $3 billion has been borrowed by the Ministry of Power over the years. So not just this administration, but over the years. And so you ask yourself, you wonder, where does this investment go? Where does the money go? Anyway, we've been promised decentralization. The states are taking laws into their own hands now. So let's give that a gestational period and see whether the states taking ownership of power generation will lead us to a better place. That's a decentralization of the grid. But apart from that, a story that caught my attention related to this is the fact that there's a report today, I believe in Punch newspaper, that says that private entities, so that's your Dangote, NNPC, Total, are generating 6,500 megawatts of electricity privately, on their own. They're off the grid. They've taken, and just to put things into context, Nigeria's power output is currently about 4,000 megawatts. So if you imagine that 6,500 is now in private hands, and they've been able to do it, and they have efficient power supply, it really does beg the question that we ask here time and time again, what is going on with our power supply?
Very quickly, the reason why this was believable yesterday was because of the number of grid collapses we had last year, and the fact that Nigerians are not confident yet that a solution has been found. And that's why that last X, even though funny, is very apt. So when would it collapse again? And also the other posts which have talked about the fact that Nigerians are not enjoying the dividends of this improvement of electricity privatization here and there, because at the end of the day, what people can use to measure, do you have light in your home? Do you have power in your businesses? Not at all. So there's a lot of, investments, solutions that have come forth that need to be done to be able to improve that sector. So whether the grid collapsed or not, people do not have power.
Definitely.
Okay, you don't want a long story. In the year 2024, we had power outage, grid collapse almost every month, 12 times. Now Nigerians were saying in 2025, the same thing will happen because transmission has been a problem. Now, the TCN yesterday, they were saying, oh, it wasn't a grid collapse. It was a Omotosho line that tripped. It was also the Gregu line and all that tripping. What is the difference between collapse and tripping? Power supply dropped from 4,000 megawatts to about 2,000. So the rhetoric is irrelevant. The basic issue is about the efficiency of the transmission company of Nigeria. It's also about upgrading infrastructure. All the experts that we have invited here have spoken about how, we have old, tired, worn-out infrastructure. It's something we have to worry about. Otherwise, when it is the next time, they will have to look for another adjective. Maybe tripping will not work. Maybe collapse will not work. They will look for, they will say we are upgrading, we are managing, whatever. That's not what Nigerians want. They want power supply.
Definitely we do. Well, beyond politics, in our feel-good story today, in a video making the rounds, Governor Hope Uzodinma and his elegant wife, Chioma, can be seen on the dance floor alongside well-wishers showing their best moves at the after-party of their vow renewal. It's good to see such a sweet side of the politician. Let's take that as we wrap up what's trending today.
If you know, you know. But if you don't know, now you know. Now you know. Now you know. If you know, you know. The big ballers in town. Now you know. Now you know. Never get boo. Forget what they're on them. Yes, how much is money? It's nothing. Ballin'. Premium or nothing. Now you know. Now you know. Now you know. Now you know. Never get boo. Forget what they're on them. Yes. And as the money now they come like us, nothing will be stopped this sauce. When I know I see me enter, they never agree you to enter my love.
Who knew Governor Uzodinma had those steps within him? Very quickly, 5 seconds.
Okay, I just love love.
Yes.
That's all I have to say. I love love.
So this was a 10-year wedding renewal video. It's good to see the other side of politicians. But, I just want to say that people are giving Governor Adeleke a run for his money.
Oh,
the other dancers in the mix, other governors were dancing in the mix.
Nigerians are hypocrites. I've seen people who criticize these same governors also dancing and attending their parties. Anyway,
well, that's all I have for you.
It's a very hypocritical society, isn't it?
On What's Trending this morning. I'll see you tomorrow.